Knowledge is power.
Now I'm going to tell you something, this isn't exclusive.
And we're all ears, David.
One of the things he said to me that seems really hard to believe, he is the guy who invented the chip that goes into these androids that they have.
Okay, we know where this is going.
The movie The Terminator apparently was based on his technology. We do have 3 battalions of these androids.
Bam, there it is. So, first question, are they operated by people or are they actual AI?
And they do have electronic intelligence. This stuff is why we really need to be careful about artificial intelligence.
So true, my friend.
We have some stuff that looks incredibly awesome, incredibly futuristic. You would think it was alien technology.
And the truth is stranger than fiction.
They've always had disclosure plans in place as a weapon of mass distraction. That's when they dropped the bomb.
All right, here's part 2 with David Wilcock, Dark Technology on the Edge of Wonder.
Edge of Wonder.
I want to get clear with you guys and with the audience about the difference between the intel that I have been leaking faithfully since Pete Peterson started to give me this stuff from high levels back in 2009. Pete Peterson worked at a presidential level advising Ronald Reagan, advising his cabinet on classified technology. He is the guy who invented the chip that goes into these androids that they have. It's an electronic intelligence. It's called the Aquarius. It's contained inside another piece of hardware called the Gatekeeper. His company was called Cyberdyne Systems, and the movie The Terminator apparently was based on his technology. He didn't build the Terminators per se, but he built the brain that goes inside. And it's based on a chip that uses photons in their wave-particle duality form, where you have all these different probable wave states, each of which becomes a circuit and a potential logic gate, as opposed to regular chips that treat electrons as either on or off. In this case, you can have one photon that's multiplexed across multiple thousands of different information channels. And so you have one little chip that could be as powerful as 10,000 desktop computers. And apparently when you get it that powerful, it kind of on its own develops this thing that they on the inside called electronic intelligence. So that's a big bombshell to drop on you guys as well. Remember, in Terminator 2, you have a black scientist who invented the Terminators, basically, and then there's people trying to kill him to save the future, because if he lives, then this timeline where all these Terminators appear takes place. So, look, I'm not saying we should kill Pete Peterson. That's just a dramatic device that they created for this movie. But what I am saying is
that you're John Connor.
From what I've heard from Pete, we do have 3 battalions of these androids. They are incredibly convincing looking. You could not tell that they are a robot. They look like a person, and they do have electronic intelligence. So those films, as weird as this sounds, and in fact there's a recent, the latest movie with Kevin Hart in it, and I'm forgetting what the title is right now, but it just came out. I think it's called Night School, and he's got various people in the night school, and one of them is another black guy who in the movie says Terminator is a documentary, and they definitely got that from me, and so I want to give them a high five for working that into the movie in a comedy context.
Let me just say this, okay, while I got the platform. For me, I first got woke when I seen Terminator, and I realized it wasn't just a movie, it was prophecy.
Wow, that's
awesome.
really interesting. I mean, so these, I don't want to use the word Terminators, but these like robots.
Can we please use the word Terminators? I think we have to now. We owe it to our audience.
Well, if you want to get technical, the actual term that Pete used for them is simulacra. That's what they apparently call them on the inside. You can go with Terminators if you want. I don't really care.
Well, what is it? The second one, he's a good guy, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so bad, I guess.
John Connor turned him back.
So are these actually just walking around in our society, or are they just like strictly military, doing military operations or warfare?
Strictly military, and actually I can get a lot clearer on this. I forget how many soldiers are in a battalion. I think it might be 4,000 or 5,000. To Pete's knowledge and his briefings, we have 3 battalions of these simulacra, and they are only to be used in case of an alien invasion, which they do think could happen. They actually do have Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. They have very specific ethical guidelines preventing them from turning on the people of this planet. So those simulacra would only be used in a very high level emergency situation. But there's a lot more to the creative behind what's really going on than what you see in any of the Terminator films. For example, a simulacra is based on a core brain, and I've heard this now from, I guess, 4 or 5 different insiders, that there is a little black box about this big, and it's a cube, okay? And it actually has 2 eyes on it, which are on these little screws. And so the screws can twist and the eyes will either widen or narrow in terms of how far apart they are. So the robot can actually turn its head, take the box out of its own head, its brain, okay, pull it out, and then pop it into another chassis, another body. And some of these bodies are very intimidating looking. They have, for example, one thing that Pete told me about was they have this thing that looks like a raptor, like a dinosaur. It is all robotic. It's got red eyes, it's got metallic features with chrome and black. It looks incredibly fierce, it's incredibly badass. And these things would be very, very difficult for us to kill. Any of these robots move so fast that you could not shoot it because it will move its body to get out of the way of a bullet as the bullet is coming near. It works so quickly that it can see the bullet coming and it will just and just dodge out of the way. But with the raptor beings in particular, that's a psychological intimidation factor. You're seeing this weird robotic dinosaur coming towards you. Now I'm going to tell you something, this isn't exclusive. I don't think I've ever shared this before. One of the things he said to me that seems really hard to believe, and I'll admit that, but this is just part of the briefings you get, is that he claims he saw a filmed demonstration in which one of these raptors was able to be running down, and they put out a 50-gallon metallic drum. It was empty inside. The raptor ran towards the 50-gallon drum, jumps up into the air, and is able to lift the drum up into the air and time the ascent of the drum and itself and get it spinning. And as it rises the drum up into the air and gets it spinning really fast, it takes its claws and it literally shredded the entire can all the way down to the bottom so that all you get is this metallic spaghetti.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, these things, and you're shooting at it and it's just, and there's no way you can hit it. He did say some of the technology I'm about to tell you about, they've actually had apparently since the 1950s. They have these things that look like maple keys. And what's cool about a maple key, if it falls off a tree, is that it falls down and it looks like a little helicopter, right? I lived in upstate New York, we had maple trees, you'd see these things falling, and as a kid you really had fun with that. So what they figured out was that they could make these little metallic maple keys and then put a little piston inside with a little tiny engine. And the piston can get the maple key to work as like its own little self-propelled helicopter. The original idea behind these was surveillance. They could send these guys in with cameras on them, or originally maybe it was just audio. you can pilot where it goes. So the maple key can go through a keyhole. It can go underneath a doorway. It'll slip into a room. It'll stick itself on the wall, and then it can monitor what's going on inside. So that was the original idea. But then they figured out how to weaponize these things, as of course they always do, right? So what they've learned is that they can target the electromagnetism of your heart rate and have the maple key turn into a smart bullet. So if you're hiding in a room and you don't want to open the door, that maple key could be just spinning outside the door, right? And it's just hovering there, and as soon as you open the door, zoop, it just goes and shoots through your heart, and it's a kill shot immediately because it has that kind of power. It also can monitor its environment, do video, do audio, this kind of stuff. So now imagine that these robots have ports that open up on their shoulders, and these little gun turrets come out, okay? And the gun turrets shoot out these maple keys, and there's an assignment for each target. So each maple key is assigned to, let's say, one target. So no matter where, even if the Terminator is off doing something else, you can run, you can scream, hide, you know, it doesn't matter. That maple key's got your name on it, and it can run for, I don't know how long, probably a couple of days, hovering, waiting for you. So this stuff is why we really need to be careful about artificial intelligence, and why we don't want to let these things get made and get released on a large level. So it's a very good thing that our military has been extremely careful, extremely paranoid. They have extensively programmed these robots with ethical guidelines, and so they would only be deployed in the case of a foreign extraterrestrial invasion of the planet. So I've heard.
I have a quick question. I want to come back to something that I think is really, I thought of while you were mentioning this. So we have the Terminator movie, right? We have the Titanic, and we have Avatar, all directed by one man named James Cameron. Okay, you just mentioned that Terminator was a documentary. The Titanic, it seems, was a psyop to get people off the scent that JP Morgan started the Fed, because that's actually what happened. And then you have Avatar, which looks like it's this crazy off-planet you know, situation where who knows where he got briefed. Like, the question comes up, like, who, I know he's very talented, but who actually is James Cameron? I mean, this guy's building subsystems and going down into the depths of, you know, the ocean and exploring things no one else has explored. And it just, I don't know if you have any intel on this. I just thought it was very interesting that this one director is behind all of this.
Look, they're all basically documentaries. You know, The Abyss is talking about undersea extraterrestrial ships that they've found, bases that they've found, alternative types of life, alternative types of intelligence. Alien, you know, in the movie Aliens, the second one, Sigourney Weaver ends up in this robotic chassis that moves with her. Pete said that is called a manipulator, and they use it again in Avatar. And in fact, Pete told me that he was dazzled when he saw Avatar, because it's practically a laundry list of things that are real technology, and he's like, oh my God, that's real. Oh my God, that's real. Oh my God, I've seen that. Oh my God, I put my hands on that. Oh my God, I helped build that thing. So yeah, the manipulators, he said they saved a lot of money by actually using the real stuff instead of building it as a set for the movie.
No way.
Jeez. That's crazy.
That is totally
so
crazy.
some people watching this might just probably are thinking like, what is going on, you know? but really, I mean, as you're talking, this is something I've known as a kid, that the military, well, I mean, this was back in, you know, in the 90s when I was growing up, that I heard from, and I can't remember who told me this, but there was actually somebody in the military that was telling me that the military is always at least 30 years ahead of, you know, civilian technology. And I remember using a GPS for the first time, and I think it was like either 99 or 2000, maybe 2001, somewhere there for the first time, and I was just blown away. And I kept thinking to myself, man, if we're using a GPS here as like a civilian, what the heck is the military using? To me, this is not that unbelievable, because the makers of the D-Wave system, I mean, the quantum computers are even stating that these computers are computing in a different dimension. I mean, that's how fast they work. They literally use a different dimension. And this is not just crazy people saying this. I mean, this is the makers coming out themselves talking about how it works and everything.
I will note that actually we do work in parallel universes.
Well,
Do you really?
is that
Yes.
I'm going to go home and drop some acid.
We've also heard stories of people creating like very realistic robots in the 90s and all these different things. So to me, it's not that, I mean, to both of us, I would say it's not really that, doesn't sound that crazy. I think what makes it more real is the fact that because we don't know, it's the uncertainty of what could potentially happen. I mean, we have like iRobot on top of Terminator, and then all these other, AI disaster movies and everything, and giving any kind of possible scenario that could happen. And then you have China that literally created Skynet. They named a company Skynet. So it's like, why would you do that?
Well, and then you have humans learning from movies and making something even more terrifying than Terminator by combining Jurassic Park with the Terminator and making a Raptor Terminator. And this stuff gets crazy.
Do you wonder?
Let's also be clear here that you can go into the official registry of corporate names and registered corporate business names and see that Pete Peterson was the owner of Cyberdyne Systems in the 1970s. That's public record. Anybody could look that up. So they actually, it's kind of like a joke, tongue in cheek, that they actually used Pete's name for the company that he used when he designed this Aquarius chip. It's really quite astonishing.
Yeah, and why would a guy like that, who's in charge of all of that stuff, lie about this? I mean, you have to ask, right? Like, he's the guy controlling all of this. I mean, if he's at a movie and he sees something that he designed or something, I mean, he's gonna say it, right? He's gonna think it's crazy.
Not only that, but Pete has introduced me to multiple other insiders who I've had the chance to meet with, to speak with, who independently validate knowing him for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, validating that what he said is true, having their own intel that is different than his, but that crosses over with his. Pete Peterson really is the father of the Alliance briefings that I got. I had been hearing about this only through Benjamin Fulford before that. And it was in 2009, July, that I first met Pete Peterson. I flew out with Project Camelot and we interviewed him on camera. And immediately after that, Pete and I became friends. And I, on average, over the last decade, have spoken to him an average of, I'd say, for 2 hours at a time, maybe twice a week. Obviously, that kind of fell off when he ended up in the hospital. But I have to say, I really want to give Pete Peterson credit for giving me a very different attitude about the US military and the intelligence community, because prior to my involvement with Pete, my perspective on this was heavily rooted in my father being a Vietnam veteran and having a very negative view of the military, finding out that he was considered property of the United States government. He had a quote he would use, "Once you sign on the line, your ass is mine." He warned my brother and me very extensively not to join the military. We even researched becoming conscientious objectors when we were in high school just so that we could avoid another draft. And when I started to talk to Pete, I became very aware that there are people who really believe their oath of enlistment, a lot of them, and want to do the right thing for the Constitution of the United States and for the people of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's a very big perceptual shift that we've had to make as a career for everybody who talks about conspiracy theory, who talks about UFOs, who talks about the Federal Reserve. It was a very predominant zeitgeist in this conspiracy analysis movement to uniformly indict all aspects of the military, the government, and the intelligence community as evil, as all part of this Illuminati, part of this cabal, part of this deep state. And what I really got from Pete, he really did become like a father to me and made me realize that we need our warriors. We need protectors. We need honorable protectors in our society. We need people who are brave enough to step up to the entrenched power structure and to work diligently to expose what's going on and to bring them to justice. As much as we would all love to think that a grassroots internet rebellion could do something, we clearly are seeing that that is nearly impossible. You can't organize. The Constitution is supposed to guarantee us the freedom to assemble. You can't assemble online because you're going to get shut down. If you tried to do a protest like what's happening in France with these yellow vest protests, which are ongoing and very intense, it's nearly impossible. There's not going to be, especially if you get into all the classified technology that the deep state possesses or had control of until recently, we can talk about that. It's not even possible that they could be opposed and brought down, and they knew that, and so they were really, really sloppy in a lot of ways. One of the pieces of intel that we have now is that they were so sloppy. They had these child trafficking rings. They didn't even try to hide it very much. They use all these crazy symbols that in the post-2016, October 2016 WikiLeaks era, now we know, oh my God, that's the boy lover symbol. Oh my God, that's the girl lover symbol. Oh my God, there's the, there's that code word. There's this code word. Look at, they're using this, they're using that. They never thought they were going to get caught, you guys, and I think you know that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very true.
Yeah, you have a really incredible article on your Divine Cosmos. I can't remember the year. Maybe it was last year or something, or maybe 2 years now.
It was called Endgame, and it was the grand summary of all this October 2016 WikiLeaks stuff.
Yes, that was, we both were blown away by that article when we, like early on, in one of our videos actually, we referenced it a lot in one of our earlier videos. And actually it was the Clinton, with Clinton and Podesta on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, which was a shock for all of us. Yeah. Probably most for you, being someone involved in that show.
Well, yeah, I want to be clear on this because there's a lot of different producers who work for Prometheus Entertainment, which is the parent company for Ancient Aliens. And I've already made my tweet, which was, I wasn't involved in that episode. I don't star in it. I was actually busy moving to Colorado. Normally we tape in February, and I missed a whole season of episodes just because I was moving. I do feel that whoever did this show could very well have not known what was going on. It didn't feel to me like there was a malicious intent, because it is interesting when you analyze John Podesta that he does have a history of pushing for disclosure. And that part was covered in that episode. Now, I'm really glad I wasn't in that episode so that there could be no misunderstandings if people think that I wanted to be in something that Podesta was starring in. But just because Ancient Aliens featured that part of his work doesn't mean that anybody there supports the other things that he's been accused of doing. And I think that's very important. I stand behind Prometheus Entertainment. I stand behind Ancient Aliens. We have done an amazing job of bringing disclosure out into the mainstream. It's the #1 most viewed show in India. It's the #1 most viewed show on television in most of the South American countries. And there's, I forget, it's like 140 episodes of it now, something like that. I'm in the majority of all of those. If they'd asked me, which, they didn't, I would have said, my God, don't put him in an episode. But I do understand that there's a part of the story here. And then if we want to just delve into that for a second, why might John Podesta be supporting disclosure if he is involved in all this other stuff that he's been accused of in these online attacks? And so let's just presume for a moment, as a philosophical argument, that all that stuff about him, or most of it, is true. And in my endgame analysis, I certainly make a compelling argument based on public information. It could be that the deep state wanted to have a disclosure plan in place in the event that this other stuff came out. We've heard from insiders all along ever since I started to talk to Pete 2009, they've always had disclosure plans in place as a weapon of mass distraction. So that when it gets down to the wire, when their backs are really up against the wall, when they're really in trouble, that's when they drop the bomb. And now, just like how 9/11 distracted everybody from Rumsfeld saying they couldn't find $2.3 trillion of money in the Pentagon, 2 days later or 1 day later you get 9/11, nobody's talking about that statement anymore. So he got to put it on the record, he got to legally clear his name, but then nobody's going to talk about it. Believe me, if they were to decloak one of our own things that we have, because we have some stuff that looks incredibly awesome, incredibly futuristic, you would think it was alien technology until you see people come out in military uniforms when it lands. If they did something like that, if they actually went there, if they crossed the line and land on the White House lawn and then we find out it's our own guys, almost anything could have happened in the world before then, and it doesn't even matter anymore.
That's very true. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Look, I don't have any personal vendetta against Hillary or John Podesta or whoever. What I do have a problem with is the scope of the lying and the depravity of the crimes, if they are in fact real. We need people who are in positions of military authority, positions of service, positions within the intelligence community, positions within government. We need somebody to stand up and protect these kids. Because if even some of the accusations are true, you have to want to see that end. You can't imagine a world in which this is allowed to take place and nobody cares. And we as a society must reach a point where we are fearless enough to look the truth in the eye, regardless of how unpleasant it is.
Thanks, David. If you want more of David's insight from The Edge, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. There's so much more to come in this exclusive series. David will be back after the conclusion of next week's Maps and Myths series to give you more new, mind-blowing information. So, stay close to The Edge of Wonder.